So now we would like to introduce to Acting Undersecretary Elizabeth Allen, please, to have some words for you, with you. Este lo hice en inglés, mi Spanglish está un poquito...
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Good morning, DCN family. I am so honored to be here. I came from Washington, D.C. yesterday. I am joined here by some colleagues also from Washington, from our public diplomacy and public affairs family. We think a lot about combating misinformation, disinformation in Washington, and sometimes it can feel a bit like an academic exercise when we're thinking so much about policy on paper. And I just have to say how energizing it is to be in a room like this, knowing that it takes all of us working together to really make a difference. And so it's with that spirit that I'm so pleased to join you today. I'll just say a few things about how this partnership really means a lot to us, and how this expansion into the Americas is a meaningful and necessary step forward. And then really, I'm looking forward to hearing from all of you this morning. So let me just say that earlier this year, when Secretary of State Tony Blinken was in Los Angeles for the Summit of the Americas, he gathered nearly 200 journalists from the Western Hemisphere to discuss media freedom. And it was there that he announced our intention to expand the DCN into the Americas. He stressed that the United States supports the communications industry, media freedom, and frankly, grassroots journalism, knowing that it's community leaders like all of you who are really going to make a difference in terms of penetrating audiences. So for me, it is an enormous privilege to be here following up on his commitment and to represent the Department of State to echo that same message and to help formally launch the DCN into the Americas. Today's event brings a new model of partnership to the Americas, a tried and tested model that has proven to be successful over the past 7 years, growing from a concept to a network over 10,000 strong. And I hope that's what so many of you take away today, is that you're joining a family, a community, as Nikos and Franix said. This is a program and a network that is here to support each other, and what we're learning in Eastern Europe and Africa can be extended to what we're going to learn here in the Americas and vice versa. It's critical that this is a global effort, not just a regional and local one, and we're so pleased to be able to join the rest of the network with all of you here today. We know that a modern, nimble network that works across borders to protect civil society, free speech, and media freedom all over the world should sound simple, right? But we, of course, know that it's not. The global spread of disinformation, violence against journalists, which we feel acutely in this region, and state-sponsored censorship and intimidation, exacerbated both by economic threats but also humanitarian ones. These pose threats to the integrity of the media industry and of freedom to the press, something that as communications professionals we think a lot about, right? It's not just about narrative, it's about the environment into which those narratives are being fed. We know that a high prevalence of disinformation and propaganda, whether we're talking about COVID or food security or climate change or voting or human rights or racism or war, it prevents citizens from accessing the facts. And those facts are necessary for making informed decisions. It increases political polarization by design. We know that the information space is being weaponized. We know that it's a theater of competition. And we know that unless we prevent it from being used for bad, we're not going to make sure that it's used for good. The United States is certainly not immune to this problem itself. We know that, and we come to this conversation with humility about that. I'd love to stand here today and say that together we can stop these malign actors and the lies they propagate dead in their tracks, but that's simply not true. You know that, I know that. The problems are too deep and too wide. As I like to say, again, countering disinformation is not just a narrative issue. It is not just about calling out lies and countering them with truths. It's about fundamentally confronting the structures that make the spread of those lies possible. So we need to be increasing digital literacy and internet freedom on top of media freedom. We know that our adversaries are playing by a different set of rules. But I can say with certainty that unless we work together across border sectors and social and generational divides, it will get worse. So since we are here all together today, in the spirit of collaboration and optimism, it is good to be able to think that we can make a dent and make a difference in this problem. That is, of course, where all of you come in, including those of you watching on the live stream. Hello to everyone joining us on the live stream, and thank you very much to our technical producers for having you join us today. We talked about how the DCN is now a 10,000 person strong consortium dedicated to combating disinformation and malign influence. And it's really about you all ensuring that access to facts and fact-based information by people around the world is what moves our democracy and democratic values forward. We know it's a big responsibility, but it's also what brings us all here today. We are bound by the common responsibility to try to move the free flow of information, however daunting that task may feel. And we know that the DCN is up to the task. How do we know that? I'll just give you one example, and some of you may be familiar with this from your colleagues in Eastern Europe. A mere 2 weeks after Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine, the DCN launched #HumansForUkraine, a multimedia campaign created to disseminate messaging to counter the influx of Russian disinformation. It was the DCN that quickly mobilized international public opinion against the invasion and provided accurate reporting in over 19 languages. And let me say, as someone who has the privilege of sitting down every morning in Washington with leaders like the Secretary of State, members of the White House and the National Security Council, I talked about the DCN and we talked about the DCN constantly in terms of our communication strategy around what was happening in Ukraine. And we know that what the government can do, what the US government or any government can do, is inherently limited, both by what we're regulated to do and also when we decide how our voice should be used. And so we have come to the table in the wake of Russia-Ukraine with a keen awareness that it's third-party, credible community voices that are really the difference makers in getting fact-based, free information flowing through audiences. And the DCN has been an oft-cited partner in those efforts. I was going to only use one example, but let me cite two, just because I have it here and I'm so proud of it. The COVID response. Many of you know that the COVID response was plagued with an infodemic about vaccines and the implications of the disease itself. But at the very outset of the pandemic, the DCN hosted regular webinars to shine a bright light on COVID-related disinformation. By connecting digital communities around the world with investigative journalists, data scientists, and other frontline counter-disinformation practitioners, the webinars served as an important conduit for sharing accurate information about the virus, a critical effort for humanitarian and economic purposes. And as Secretary Blinken has noted previously, quote, information is a public good, crucial to everything we do, to every decision we make. And to that point, I want to share with you, in terms of our personal commitment to this issue, when Secretary Blinken and I were in New York City last month for the United Nations General Assembly Week, the very first public event that he did, and I accompanied him, was an event with exiled journalists and activists in the freedom of expression space to be able to show our commitment to this. It is critically important because, as we said at that time, being able to solve every other challenge out there and being able to understand even what the problems are to solve relies on the flow of true information. So really, a free press, a vibrant information space that allows free information and truthful information to break through is really critical to everyone's geopolitical efforts, economic efforts, humanitarian efforts, and all the rest. We know that it's the very foundation upon which progress is going to rest. So, on behalf of the Department of State, we look forward to supporting you. We look forward to supporting the DCN's growth in the Americas, and moreover, to supporting your efforts to counter disinformation and bolster strong, free, more resilient information in the Western Hemisphere. As you all decide the direction that the DCN will take, we look forward to being your partner. This is really your network, and we are here to support you and to be your partners going forward in our collective efforts. We can do that by providing content, resources, and using our convening power, which we sure will do. It is our sincerest hope that you will use this launch and this event today and tomorrow to its fullest potential, forging partnerships and platforms to advance your work. So make sure for all the coffee breaks and the lunch breaks that y'all talk to each other, because it's this network that's going to make a difference. In closing, I'd like to offer a very special thank you to the DCN Global Board, many who are joining us here today. They are tirelessly dedicated to this mission, and it is a truly global one. It is my honor to be here as your partner. Thank you for having us. And to all of our speakers, we are so excited to hear from you next. I am very, very excited to see your enthusiasm and your willingness to help build this network. I'm really so pleased to be here today, and I look forward to meeting most of you. We're so very proud of how far this network has come so far and where you're all going to take it from here. Thank you so much.